Hey everyone, welcome to another Coffee with Kittl. Today we're talking about digital products and Etsy, things that I'm sure some of you are familiar with but maybe want to learn more about. And Bailey is a great source of knowledge for that. So, as well as your story, which I think I want to get into here in just a second. But if you don't mind, before we get into some of the specific questions, would you mind introducing yourself, who you are, what you do on YouTube, and then we can dive in?
Sure. Yeah, I am Bailey, and I am the owner of Bailey Design Co. on Etsy. And then I have my own site as well that sells the same designs. I've been on Etsy probably close to 5 years now.
Hmm.
I started out in the handmade space, moved to the POD space, and then now have been in the digital space for the past 2.5 years. And
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
also
So
on YouTube teaching digital products now.
okay. Yeah. So you've hit all of the basically the big areas of Etsy. So
Yes.
handmade, which is like kind of what they were, meant for slash made for, right? Handcrafted goods, that kind of thing. And then assuming you tried the print on demand model for some amount of time, and then as I was reading, you kind of just was like, all right, let me just try this digital thing, and then that worked really well, right? So
Yes.
if I want to know, let's just kind of go through it like that because that's really good. Part one, part two, part three. So part one, can you explain what you were making in the handcrafting side of things, like in the beginning? Because I remember reading your story. It really came down to a issue of fulfillment, right?
Yes.
So because that's really hands on. So what were you making, and where did it like become to be like difficult?
Yeah. So the thing with my stuff is it all revolves around a tumbler. When I started out making handmade, I was making the glitter resin epoxy tumblers. If you're
Oh,
not familiar with them, they take close to at least a week to a week and a half to make them start to finish, just because they have curing processes and
wow.
paint, sand, and then application of vinyl and all kinds of things. And they have to, cure for 24 hours at a time during each stage. So that was the handmade part. And I only did that. I got into it because I didn't want to, I had just had my second child. I did not want to go back to
Mm.
my 9 to 5. And I was scouring YouTube for not at the time anything digital or POD, just anything I could do from home. I had a barn and I was into physical products, and I was like, I have the space, I could do something in e-commerce. And I stumbled on these YouTube videos about making these tumblers, and I was just like, I want to do that. And I want
Mm.
to, I was really interested in it. And I have no crafting background or anything, but they
Mm.
just looked really fun. And I wanted to make it. And within 2 months, we were so busy that I hired my mom, my brother, and my husband would do it at night when he would come home from work.
Wow.
And it was just so crazy. And I mean, Etsy even, limited us because we were getting too many orders. And so it was
Wow.
crazy because I just didn't expect to see that kind of success.
Mm.
And so that got to the point where we did that probably close to a full year.
And
I
were
got
these
pregnant.
were these custom, were these like people were sending you what they want on the tumbler, or was this the same tumbler that you could kind of rinse and repeat?
No, I think I had 20 different designs of like different styles and colors of glitter combos. And the
Okay.
only thing that they would personalize is with their name. So that would
Okay,
get
so they would
applied.
with their name, okay.
Yeah, yeah, if they wanted, or a quote or something, and
Mm.
that would get applied with vinyl and then sealed that way.
Ah,
So,
okay, got it.
yeah, total process and super fun to make. I would love to still do it if I had time and not 4 kids. So it was
Right.
just, like, what are you going to do? You have to choose something.
Yeah.
So, probably after a year, I was just like, there's got to be something easier. And that's when sublimation printing on tumblers got really big. And so I was seeing all kinds of new methods of printing on the tumblers. And I was just like, well, that looks way easier. Take a product down from a week and a half down to we can make this in 5 minutes. And
Okay. Okay.
so that's when we got into sublimation. And so we kind of pivoted there and again got super busy, super hard to scale that without hiring even more people. Couldn't go on vacation, 3 kids at this point. And so I'm just like, well, let's move it to POD. So we move it to POD. It still has a personalized aspect that there was no customization apps at that time. So we did it all. And I even put the same designs on sweatshirts, on t shirts, everything POD where the design would make sense. I would put it on there
Hmm.
and got super, super crazy. Excuse me. And then COVID hit, and we had major supply issues with our print on demand
Mm,
supplier.
yeah.
And so I was stressed out because I was just like, I couldn't get any more inventory. So at the end of that year, I was just really thinking, I make these designs for these POD tumblers. Why don't I just be the first person and just make the design and be digital and be done with it, and no more fulfillment, no more personalization.
They just
And
put it on
that's,
the Tumblr themselves. Yeah.
yeah. And that's
Mm,
when I made the switch to decide just to go all in on digital. I switched every POD thing off.
mm.
And in January of 2022, switched it to be purely digital.
Wow. The same store. So you didn't open up a different Etsy store, is that right?
Same store. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. 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 So, and would you say that all three of these stages, so the actual doing it yourself, the tumblers, design, all that stuff, then moving it to print on demand, and then now having just selling a digital product, do you think the amount of profit from all three of those stages are about the same? Is one of them more? Like, I mean, I'm assuming the initial one of having to like also package and do labels and then ship them, and so there's a little bit of an extra cost there. Like that would take some of that away. But yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, which one at your current experience do you believe has been more lucrative?
Definitely digital by 5 times the amount. And I
Wow.
sell, that's the whole thing is people tell you to be a six-figure Etsy seller, you have to sell a high ticket digital product. And
Mm.
mine is a $3 digital product. And it's been 5 times the amount of any given year on physical products or POD.
Why do you think? Why do you think? Well, I'm not sure who's saying this, but why do you think the Etsy sellers are saying a high ticket digital product, and what would that be exactly?
Not necessary Etsy sellers, other Etsy
Oh, okay.
influencers or gurus or whatever you want to call them say
Yeah.
that you cannot be a six-figure Etsy seller if you sell something under $10. And
Hmm,
I'm
okay.
here. I have multiple friends who have same types of files of shop files that we sell files in, all over six figures, multiple six figures, just like me. And we all sell low ticket. High ticket for them is anything over $15 for a file, all the way up to a website template for $175, which I bought myself off of Etsy because I wanted that
Wow.
specific file. And they sell
Interesting.
them on Etsy, and that's pretty much one of the only places to get them. So there is plenty of room to do high ticket digital on there.
Yeah.
You just have to have the skill to do that.
That's interesting. I didn't even know that you could sell a web like. I wonder if they've made it in whatever the platform, and then you get like
You
the
get
link
a
to that.
link. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So
Got
you
it.
can
Got it.
only do it for certain ones. Like I've bought Show It templates on there and Wix templates on there.
Wix oh,
And
okay, cool, yeah.
yeah, you just
Probably
buy it.
Shopify, I would assume. There's probably
There
Shopify and other
probably
stuff.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. I know a lot of people sell Notion templates, like
Yes.
the software that you can go in and the template might be catered to book writing, or the template might be catered to task management or YouTube content, right?
Right.
You would buy the template in Notion that's already there. So yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I've never heard high ticket used with digital product before, so that's interesting. Um, when you were mentioning the struggles in the first two phases were scale, right? And you're hitting a wall, right? Hitting the ceiling essentially is like this is the most amount of fulfillment we can do. Obviously, there is no fulfillment with the digital product. It is on repeat all the time. But let's maybe talk about what scaling that looks like. I mean, did you just have and totally fine if this is the answer to the question, but you just had success with this one product and you were like, sweet, I'm done, I'm just gonna let it go? Or did you say like, okay, how do I make what do I do to make the next product that also does the same thing that product did? um yeah.
I think it comes for me specifically and semi related niches. It's choosing that audience that we're in. I call them audiences or niche. You can call them either or. And because you're picking this customer so specifically, they have a constant need, no matter what time of year, to need the next style of design for whatever season, holiday, occupations, trends, hobbies. And so we have this like blessing, I call it, just because we're not limited where we can just make a digital planner. And how many varieties of digital planners can you really make for
Hmm.
that type of store? When it comes down to our product, because our customer needs them for hundreds of different things, we never are running out of ideas or the next thing to design for, because on top of the next season already being 2 months down the line, or Christmas or whatever, it changes with the trends so and the style of design. So this year's Christmas designs they're going to be different than what I sold last year, because the trends and the design styles have changed. People are not going to want that same thing I designed last year. So we get to do a whole other thing. And so that's why I call it's like pretty limitless as far as, and then you're just going to have, we have just thousands and thousands of different customers who all want something different. And so if you are big enough like me and we have the availability to just reach all of these different types of customers who want all these different types of styles, because in turn those people have those customers, we essentially have an infinite number of opportunity. It's really crazy. And that just it when I try to explain this to my students, I'm just like, don't think like you're boxed in. Like, there
Hmm.
is no such thing as saturation. There is, like, because there are so many people and so many different designs and ways you can take it, and then even take it a step back further and just really, hone in that. Guess what? Next month is 4th of July or whatever it is. And you just have an infinite number of opportunity. I can go on about that, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you have these kind of offerings, like the master classes you have, or the guides and things like that for teaching, like you mentioned, what's kind of the first thing you take people through, either that they could expect on your YouTube channel, or kind of the first steps in either taking your class, or whatever the advice is for taking someone through the first step of this, or yeah, creating something that's going to be optimal, it's going to work, right? Because they've been set up for success to create the things that are going to make sales.
My biggest advice to all of them is just that you have to do your research first and understand who it is that's going to be buying your designs, regardless of what product it's for. Because if you don't understand that audience and say that they are, a customer that has the likelihood of just purchasing that product one and done and no repeat ever again, in my mind and how I teach, I say no, because we don't want a customer that is just going to buy one thing from us one time and never come back. I want them to
Mm.
come back every single day. And it's funny, I have customers who buy from me every single day. And it's because they need something different every day and every season, holiday, so on and so forth. So I just say to choose your customer wisely. And then you can, believe me, you can figure out your products after and how you're going to design them and what you're going to use, and go that route. And I think that this just comes from the experience of, I had such fast success with the digital designs because I was the customer first. I made
Hmm.
the
Okay,
product myself. I knew about it. I bought hundreds of designs. So I knew what they were looking for because I had done it. So
got
that
it.
also, I teach them, if you have experience, or, you are familiar with something, go for that, because you'll be 10 steps ahead if you are familiar with whatever you're trying to design for, or that audience, you have a connection with them, so you know what they want.
Yeah, I think where a lot of people deter from that is just jumping on a trend,
Hmm.
and not attaching the trend to what they actually know really well, or having a if we're talking print on demand, having a store that's kind of just like all over the place, right? Very scattered, doesn't look like
Yeah.
anything's connected. And so I'm thinking there might be some people wondering about that as it relates to digital products, because it's like, well, if it is a, let's say, a planner, or if it's like in your case, the, another good example is like printable wall art, something that can be used and iterated on, so you can make multiple different kind of designs for that. How, I mean, outside of just knowing the customer really well, because you were the customer first, how do you go about presenting that on, say, an Etsy shop, or if someone was going to try to go maybe they have a Shopify, or a personal website and they're going to do ads or something like that, but the presentation and the, like, cohesiveness of what this store offers, because clearly there's this expectation that's met every time someone comes to your store. They buy something, that was a good experience, let me go see what else they have. Nice, they've got this, that was a good experience. So yeah, I guess it's kind of building this experience, but everything comes into it, is like how you're presenting it, like what you look like, showcasing examples, like that kind of stuff. How do you walk people through that?
I think that for us, because we design in so many different styles, because there are just thousands of different customers, um, since we're on the kind of like creative side, I don't tell them to necessarily box themselves in with a particular way that you present your designs. Now, I mean, as far as the mock-ups that we use, there's a certain type that we use that just convert really well, usually on our types of digital
Mm-hmm.
products and files. But I I actually teach them to, not even look at Etsy as far as what is out there trending, because if it's on there already, you're pretty much too late, and you don't want to be just, a carbon copy of the next one, because it's just not going to sell. So I teach them all types of different avenues to find new trends that we can apply to our products. And that way you are hopefully first, if not, right on at the beginning of it. So I teach them to always be presenting something new, um, if that makes sense, because if you're, again, a carbon copy of 20 other shops on that first page, you're not, and especially as a new seller, you're just not going to make sales. And that's just the reality. And there are so many tools out there that the design part theoretically it's pretty easy. It's just,
Hmm.
how to do that initial research. And if you understand your customer, like I understand sublimation crafters, you know where to look to see what they want. And then that way you can present something new to them. And when you do that, it's pretty much automatic.
Okay. So when you say you know where to look, so for example, in your case, tumblers or sublimation, or people that fit that description of you. Maybe for someone else, it's a different product entirely. What are there certain tools or places that you go, like you're saying, kind of besides just Etsy, to do this research? Because I think step one would be, okay, I know this thing, and I'm also passionate about this thing. I have some experience in this realm of expertise, but there is some extra research that needs to be done. So, where are you going to go to do that?
So as long as I've validated that, there's demand for the product, and
Mhm.
I just use tools like Everbee, usually, and make sure that there are, shops and listings that are making the amount of sales that I want them to be making, to prove that it's a viable product. Then for the next step, it's to go, for me personally, and it was this way with even the handmade tumblers. Um, and it's still, for digital designs, it's still pretty much the number one place, is to go to, well, both of them are, both Pinterest and TikTok. I saw a particular, you'll think it's funny, but nail designs on Pinterest.
Hmm.
That is how my first handmade product went basically viral on TikTok. I posted it on there. We had 100 sales the next day. And that is from finding a nail design on Pinterest and putting it on a Tumblr and then posting it to TikTok. And I had like 300 followers at the time. So it's not like, I had
That
followers,
is
because I
so
did it.
weird.
So
That is strange.
it's just finding, unique ways like that to find and then apply it to your product. And yeah, it will take some testing. It took me lots of time to test that kind of stuff, and figure it out. But and then just other marketplaces. I use places like Amazon and AliExpress because usually they're ahead of the curve a little bit on designs for products and things. So I'll go look there. But those are, and sometimes Instagram, not as much, but those are some of the places that we go to find stuff that's ahead of Etsy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure I would have put TikTok in that research category. Now, if you can be smart like that and saying like, "Dang, this is like clearly trending. Like, how do I apply this to my product or my offering?" I mean, yeah, I could have even seen that type of success probably work for the print on demand people if they would have thought
Yes.
to do the same thing, because then they can just buy the finished product, right? Like if you think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. So that's really interesting and a pretty yeah, that's cool. I like Pinterest a lot. They have a ton of stuff like
Yeah.
just anything you ever want, you can put in a string of key terms and get something real unique, I think.
Yes,
Then you can look at
definitely.
like how that pen is doing. Is there interest in that pen? Is it already linked to a product? You can look at the pins that it suggests to you, like after you click in and it suggests other pins like that. So then you can, I mean, do you make kind of boards for these kinds of things like in Pinterest, or you just like, oh, I like that, and then you kind of leave?
No, I do. I'm super organized for that Pinterest account. Um, yeah, I have boards for any topic or group that I would be essentially designing for. I'll put them in their own buckets so that whenever I can't think of it or I don't have a list that's 100 deep already anyway, then I can go just pull from those buckets, and I never run out of designs. People say that all the time. Well, I don't know what to design for. I run out of ideas, and just go on there for an hour and you'll, just type in nursing designs or whatever it is that, or that's just a broad example.
Mm-hmm.
And, you'll just wind up on there for way longer than an hour and you'll come out
Oh
with,
god, yeah. Oh yeah.
hundreds of things in your head.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can spend hours on Pinterest for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, 100%. Now, how do you just kind of hit on something topical like you said, nurse designs. Not entirely, I mean, everything under the sun is going to come up if you type that in. But how do you or what would your advice be to people to avoid being overgeneralized or too broad? Because I think like the strength would be in the topic, but then nuanced enough to be fitting what I guess we would call a sub niche or an
Right.
audience that's interested in a sub or a specific topic. So how do you what is your advice for that? Like to avoid being like, hey, I mean, you can't just sell like just it just says like dog mom. Like there's a
Right.
million of that, right? Like you can try, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Right. My advice is to cross niche as much as possible. And if people look at my designs, they know that I do this heavily, but I'll take something like, for us, a lot of country and like rustic type designs do very well.
Hmm.
So I will cross niche that with something crazy like celestial moon phase, boho vibes type things.
Those are pretty
And
related. Yeah, those go pretty well together, I think. Depending, I don't know which ones you're looking at, but like the boho mystical, like the like the snake and like
Yeah, but then
yeah.
I cross niche that with country like boots and sunflowers
Mm,
and really just really like you wouldn't think they go together, and those designs performed amazing because it was new. There was no one with cowboy boots and moon phases and sunflowers.
interesting.
So really just think outside. I tell them just try something new. People don't want to buy the same thing over and over again, and you'll be surprised when you put now it's been kind of overdone because I did it last year. I was like, then you put your dog mom up there, but you make it a 4th of July dog mom with the cowboy boots. Like, go even deeper. Or you make that for, a specific nurse who has a golden retriever for 4th of July. They are going to love that. And so I'm big on that. And I'm just like, sure that it might not hit thousands and thousands of people, but you only need a couple of those to hit a few groups and you're fine. So
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely territory I think people are uncomfortable going towards. I
They
that
don't
that
experiment. Yeah, they don't want to experiment.
yeah, and I think uh, perhaps it's I'm thinking of like our pretty large print on demand audience in that they're like, oh well, that would be a lot of work to mess with that and then put it on a variety of products. Whereas with a digital product, it's like, well, I only made the poster once, so you're welcome to buy it as many times as you want. There's no extra work there, so that does kind of make sense in that regard. But generally, I think that's a really I'm not sure. I've definitely heard, of course, cross niche, but I don't think I've heard it exaggerated to that level of experimentation. So,
Oh my gosh, you should see some of the designs that I have on my shop. If you want to see exaggeration, that's where people can go look.
well, if people are buying them, then that means that there's demand for that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
specific thing. Yeah. So maybe the last thing we can talk about, just because I know that there's going to be people that either fit this category or have doubts, and I think it's your kind of typical like, well, that can probably work for you because you had a shop that was already successful, or you have a shop with sales already, and so you are kind of blessed by the Etsy algorithms to kind of show your stuff more because of the previous sales you have. It's not so easy for me with like zero, not as much visibility. And of course there's some like research back in SEO stuff that can help that initial claim. But to a degree, someone could be really trying all of the right things, but not necessarily, well, maybe they're not, depends, but like not seeing the same gradual growth that you would expect to see. So, what kind of advice do you give to those kind of voices that are like, that looks great, it's easy for you because you were established. I don't think it's so easy for somebody that's going to come right out of the gate.
I will say that my shop had sales on it, but nowhere like to the shop only had combined with the POD and the handmade before, it only had 9,000 sales on it. And I think it had 900 reviews. So not even 1,000 reviews. Now it has over 30,000 and the sales, but that, so I mean, it looked good. At least it had a lot of stars, and sales. But after that, though, I will say that I've also had a brand new digital planner shop. I've had an SVG shop. And then I've had a hybrid shop that was POD and digital products on it. All three, no social media with them, nothing. Just extreme niching down with, if it was the SVG, finding those lowest competition keywords in eRank or Everbee, and then making something completely unique to the platform, meaning it does not look like what's on that first page. Now, this only works if that it's low competition, because you're not going to get that off of SVG or star SVG. It
Right.
has to
Oh,
be
right,
something
right, right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
specific, and you're not going to get thousands of sales off of that, but that's enough to get you started. And I tell them that's okay if they only have 100 searches a month, 50 searches a month. The idea is to build up a catalog of those lower competition keywords, and then be unique enough in your design that you are going to stand out. And that's what I teach across any category, whether that is digital planners or SVGs or Tumblr wraps. It doesn't, or POD, because I have POD people in there too. And just really focus on that uniqueness quality, because that's really what's going to sell it. As long as you've met that low competition thing, because I do get that. I will tell them that, however, if you are running ads and you are willing to spend money, this is a
Mm,
different story, because
mm.
at
Yeah.
one point I spent $10,000 a month on ads on my $3 digital product,
Wow.
and it was still 5x. So it'll
Wow.
work, but that's a whole strategy in itself, because the price point is so low. But it's just a different strategy if you have the money to run ads, because you're going to know right away if that design is good or not.
Mm.
Well, much sooner than waiting, 2 months for it to rank, if it
Right.
ever does rank.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good advice. Well, where can people follow, get in touch? Where's the best place? Other than the YouTube, I'll have that linked. But
Yeah,
anything else you have coming up, just let them know.
yeah, I have a new free Facebook group that is digital product seller friends. Trying to remember.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I have my community that is my paid community. And then trying to get back on Instagram, but we're not there yet. So YouTube is my main place.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out and chat through this. I hope it's been extremely beneficial for everyone that's watching. For those of you watching, if you have a question, a specific question on something that we talked about, or want to dive deeper, please drop that down in the comments so that we can check that out, make more content based around that for you. And don't forget to subscribe, especially if you've watched this far into the video. That'd be really weird if you weren't subscribed to the channel. So do that. It'll take just 2 seconds, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.